So service design are really good at making experiences visible. We map them, we blueprint them, and we put them in all sorts of frameworks. But how many of us are really embodying these experiences that we design for? Now, service design happens in real time at different points of interactions or touch points, essentially, between people, between environments, and that's just the basic. Now, they are wrapped in so many layers of complexity of emotions, expectations, and of course, uncertainties. And overall, none of these things ever go according to plan, or they refuse to actually. Now, there is one field that has been studying this for centuries. It's none other than performance arts, theater, and improv. So there's one question that really starts coming in the back of my mind. Are we designing these experiences that people actually live? Or are we designing representations of these experiences, which makes sense to us designers? Now, if that question is making you a little bit uncomfortable, then this episode is exactly for you. Because today we are going to dive outside of our usual design kit and ask what theater, performance arts, and even play might be teaching us in designing services. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to another episode of Community Voices, your weekly touchpoint with the SDN community. I'm Sudeshna Mehta, Foresight Strategist, Ecosystem Builder, a part of the SDGC26 comms team, and your favorite host for Community Voices. Now, before we begin, let's make it a bit interactive, shall we? Tell us in the chat where you're joining from and what is one unique tool that you use in your design practice to create these embodied experiences or get an experience of that. Now, let me give you some time. And as you're doing that, also let you know, as always, you can drop your questions in the chat and we'll take them live during our Q&A. Perfect. As you're typing that in, let me introduce this episode to you. So today is our 5th SDGC special, and we're going beyond boundaries, as I mentioned, at the intersection of service design, performance arts, and theater. And I'm super excited to be joined by the incredible Adam Lawrence and Maria Wan, 2 incredible practitioners who bring different perspectives into design, experimentation, and embodied practice. So we're not just asking what theater can teach service designers. We're going to ask the harder questions. So wait for that. With that, let's step onto the stage and bring our incredible guest. Hi, Adam. Hi, Maria.
Hi there.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us. And I loved your intro. I mean, you could have taken the stage all by yourself already.
Thank you. Well, welcome to the virtual stage. The actual stage is going to be in Helsinki. So looking forward to giving everyone a little bit of promo of what is going to happen and then taking it to the actual stage. Right. To now kick us off, I want to start with a fun question because you're both from theater background. If your practice, design practice, were a theater production, what role would you play naturally? Like, would you be a director, performer, or, I don't know, improviser, or something else entirely? I don't know the entire nomenclature, so I'm going to leave you to it. And the second part of that question is, how did performance and theater begin in your work and embodied practice become a part of your work? So I'm going to throw the ball to first Adam.
Thank you. I think I'm a director. Not in the sense of someone who commands and instructs, because there are different types of direction in theatre. And I'm the type of director who develops with the cast, I hope. And that's quite an interesting parallel to a lot of the things we do in design, service design, in product and things like this, because very often in film or theatre or one of these things, the person directing is leading people and is not able to do the thing that they can do. Most directors are not also actors. Some are, some very good ones are, but many are not actors. So they're asking people to do a thing which they can't do themselves. That's a lot like leading, let's say, a service design project with technical people or coders or something like that who are going to do a thing which I can't do myself, or let's say medical staff. There's often that gap in knowledge, and then it becomes about holding the space and helping those people to do amazing work. It's a facilitative role, I think, the service designer. That corresponds most closely for me to certain types of direction.
And what type of director particularly do you see yourself in?
I try to be a facilitative one. There are some times I have a very clear vision, what I want to do, especially around technical stuff, movement on stage, stunts. I'm interested in stage combat and things like this. And then I have a very clear vision what I want for that one. But to get there, to get the story, and even to shape that scene, then I need all the co-creative parts. If you think about it, a stage play, for example, has 4 main co-creative partners. There's the author, there's the ensemble, the director, and the audience, and they're all co-creating together. 3 of them get together in advance, if you like, and 1 joins each night, is different every night. And that's very interesting as well, because when we are co-creating services with our consumers, which is the true meaning of the word co-creation, that we actually create them in the moment. There's no point serving a meal unless somebody wants to eat it. Yeah? Then that is different every night as well. And so we always have to leave space in that moment for the people we have interacting with the audience, and the audience to co-create meaning for themselves as well. So it's really, it can't be too directive in the sense of saying it will be exactly like this. That just doesn't work.
Yeah. That is such a beautiful point, and I'm going to come back to this point as we dive into the conversation a bit more. Maria.
Well, if Adam took the director space, that's great. Yeah. I mean, coaching and facilitation are the things that I would be doing as a director as well, of course, depending on the play and the screen and the style, and the theme. So, but let us not go into that. So. I would be the dramaturgist or screen, how to bring the screen or the playwright and the text into the story. So it would be a storytelling and what to leave out and what to bring. So that would be what I would do as a designer.
That is incredible. It almost reminds, like, is there anything which is similar to editorial in playwriting? It might be. I'm not very familiar with terms.
Maybe somewhat, but I mean, I think in theater there are more, because if you look at the play itself, just mostly dialogue, but depending on the playwright. But it's mostly dialogue, and there's so much in between what is not said. And I'm really intrigued by those, because it may contain a lot of information. And well, okay, it might be with the director that one decides like what kind of a meaning it has in between the lines.
True.
So not everything is written there like really, really detailed. Okay, some playwrights did that and dictated very much what should be played out.
Indeed, and some go the opposite way. You get play scripts where they put in random line breaks and don't use punctuation and stuff like that to really challenge you to find new ways to understand the words. And that's very interesting as well. I think we have that choice if we are seeing ourselves as the designers of an experience, which overlays a service, of course. How much space do we leave for the interpretation in the moment? I remember the great Lufthansa project with IDEO, which was presented at the conference a few years ago, where they knew that they were redesigning the business class experience, and they had to leave space for the crews in the air to give it their own flavor.
Oh yeah.
They couldn't go all the way with this. They had to set up the new opportunities for the crew and explain that to them, and then leave them to interpret it because they are performing.
Yeah, and I like the fact that, like Adam said, that every performance is its own. It's a live experience. Anything can happen. And that is also, well, it's in the end, you can design as good a service as possible. It looks great as a blueprint. But when you take it to the live life, then it's a different story, and it depends on the people who carry it out, and a lot is on their shoulders. So how much do you design on things that you can control and things that you cannot control?
Yeah, that is so beautifully said. I'm actually going to refer that to a question that we asked in the beginning of today's conversation, which was around how much is lost in translation of designing a service or choreographing that service to actually when we turn it into like a 2D blueprint or map, and what are the things that are lost that we are looking at in the embodied practice? And you already highlighted decision points, and there might be slowly coming more of those things. But yeah, go ahead.
After you, Maria.
Honestly, that's a really tricky question. I would just say that you don't know if you don't walk it through. And actually, that's one thing that you can do in sort of what you learn from theater before you go on a live performance. Then you always practice it, well, several times. And there's like the dress rehearsal. And there's a saying, if the dress rehearsal goes really bad, then the opening night goes great. So,
really?
Yeah, so you're supposed to have the dress rehearsal really bad. Not that they aim in that. But anyway, so you go through the play as if it were live performance. And that's whatever we design, we should always practice it. Yeah. Because so long as it's on Miro board or mural board or in our heads or post-it, it's not live. It's just there. And we don't know how much we're losing in translation. So practice it. Lots of dreamy words. I know that people are saying like, so when would I have time to do all this?
I think this is really, really important. And it comes back to, I think, what's a broken model of service design, which I hope we're moving beyond, which is the idea of something like a blueprint as a deliverable, because it's not. Yeah, it is emphatically not what we're supposed to be making. A playwright writes a play and they hand it over. Okay, that's different in our world. A product designer makes a CAD/CAM file and hands it over, and so on. But the end product of a service design process is a running, self-sustaining service.
Yeah,
that is the only end product we're interested in, even if our role changes through the entire thing. Yeah, so we're using a couple of words here, which I think are interesting because we just separate between them. There's a word practice and a word rehearsal. I don't know about how in Finnish or other languages, or in the ones I speak, they're different things. Yeah, and that's quite interesting. In the State Theatre here in Nuremberg, where I live, it has one corridor, and on one side there are practice rooms, on the other side there are rehearsal rooms. It's that different. Yeah, practice is when we do something over and over again to get it smooth. It's necessary for to be virtuose at something. You have to do it 1,000 times until your fingers fly by themselves or whatever. But before that, before we know what we are practicing, we have a rehearsal process. And the word rehearsal comes from the French word rehearse, which is a rake, yeah, or a harrow. It's the thing that you dig the ground with and then smooth around and shape and dig again and change the shape of things. And in rehearsal process, you are digging and reshaping. You're finding out what might this be like. And it's very, very important to say the way that we do save time is we do that all the way through. We discover how the service might be by rehearsing it, by trying to do it in physical space. We then codify that in some kind of form of this is the typical situation, if you like a script or a blueprint or whatever. And we need that for all the backstage process. Of course, it's super, super important, but it's not the whole story, because we have a prototype in the form of the scene, of the rehearsal. And then what I'd love to do is then bring in the real staff who are going to really deliver this thing and rehearse it with them and let them find their own voice for this. Because very often the people at the front interface of organizations, the ones who are actually engaging with the public, they're on the hotline, they're in the retail unit, they're in the advisory session, they're the nurses and doctors in the hospital, stuff like this. Very often, with a couple of exceptions, they're quite poorly paid. And people think that the way to get good quality work from these folks is to script every word. And then you get the good morning, welcome to McDonald's, my name is Adam, have a nice day kind of situation, which everyone knows they've been told to say, and this makes an awful experience. So
Right.
in a good rehearsal, you can take a good script, yeah, and make it into a great performance by letting the people who are going to deliver it use their own voices, find their own voices and use them. And this, for most people, is enormously motivating. It makes a better employee experience, and we know that a good employee experience leads to a good customer experience. So giving people freedom to find their own voice and enough structure to feel safe and not to feel exposed by the organization. This is where the sweet spot is. And I think rehearsal is incredibly important in this, which is why rehearsal is one of my main tools for research, for ideation, for prototyping, and for implementation, which I emphatically believe we need to be more strongly involved in.
Yeah. Adam,
Hey, hey.
Go ahead.
Dear Adam, thank you so much. You just taught me something about theater, because I wouldn't know in Finnish, for example. We have plenty of words, but I don't think there's a distinction between practice and rehearse.
Fantastic. I learned something. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I may be wrong, and some in the audience, somebody maybe can correct me, but I love that thinking that you made the distinction between the two words and the thinking around it. So
yeah, it really came home to me when I was walking down that corridor in the theater, and I went like this, yeah, because they're identical doors on both sides, you know, small rooms and large ones, you know, and from one of them you'll kind of hear you know, someone who's really practicing a thing.
Yeah.
And from the other one you'll hear conversations and discussions and try again, and what if we do it this way? Yeah, it's a different stage in the process, and it continues through, of course, but we shouldn't be practicing before we've rehearsed. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And it's so important to realize that also design, whatever tool you use or method, it's a living document. I know me myself, I would like, okay, I designed this one, it's done, it's great, and I'm so happy, and everybody says, hooray! And then after a while, it's void. It doesn't work anymore. So have to rehearse it again, maybe practice even.
Yeah. And you have a thing which I guess is the role of the manager in commerce, in most of the places that we work, which is in theater. There's a thing called, in German, it's Abendregie, which means you have someone, often the dramaturg, will sit into the 20th performance or the 40th performance and watch, yeah, and see what has slipped up, what has evolved, and we want to keep. That's better now, yeah. And what we lost in the everyday that maybe we could refresh our memory of. And that's interesting to think of that role of who carries that in an organization. You know, is it the team lead? Is it the retail unit manager? Is it someone from the design team who comes back to look at this thing again and say, hey folks, what do we think about this? That's an interesting question as well, because you won't see that in the metrics.
And that is also a great question. But before we go there, I just want to say the kind of vocabulary that you've built for us around practice, rehearsal, and performance, I really love that, because it separates the three of them. And I'm going to try my best to articulate one of the aspects of it, which is practice seems like something that you do more of in self in order to improve a skill. Rehearsal is more of that co-creation with other fellow actors or people you're performing with to improve, not really improve, but to improvise on what you could make the other person feel through your piece or your work. And then the last one is performance. You're like co-creating that live with every audience who's in the field of your, again, work, play, drama, whatever you call it. So that was like a little bit of a takeaway that I was starting to form. But I'm curious about the performance aspect of it. Like, as you said, there are no metrics to actually figure out what is this evolution like. So how do you even begin to bring this into business practice? And you've been doing a great job at connecting all these things that you've mentioned to business practice and case studies and conversation. What was your method of bringing this to business practice as a metric?
Was that for me or was that for Maria? Maria, you go first, please.
You go.
A lot.
I again say about the blueprint, because it's so easy to take theater there because you have the front stage and the backstage. But what I would like to bring is kind of if you have to put some frameworks and methods there, I would say systems thinking is the one, because in theater you have to take into consideration so much. Hey, there's eventually the sponsor, and aren't theaters always running out of budget? So there's somebody with the finance aspect that you have to consider also artistically. So the same thing goes in whatever you design. There's always somebody saying that whether how much you have budget. Then you have the players and all the backstage people. You have the theme. Maybe that's the values or the brand that you want to convey. So many different factors. So I mean, you could build sort of a theater of your own when you are designing, and eventually there is the audience with whom you co-create the customer experience, and it's different every time, because anything can happen on the stage, anything can happen in the audience, and it might be a good day for people, it might be a bad day for the people. So what comes up and how you feel in the end when you leave the performance, when you leave using the product or service, that's what you should also consider. A very vague answer, Ben.
Yeah, I think that's really important. There's so many places where we could be looking for success, and success factors in this, and that is one of the things I think that theatre does very, very well. Is that, and I'm talking about theatre here, but I mean that word more broadly. I often just say showbiz. So it could be music, it could be storytelling, it could be television, film, anything. Yeah. One of the things it does very, very well is it encapsulates a world. I mean, Chekhov famously said a play is a story, is a life story in 1 hour, which is hilarious because his plays are all 3.5 hours long. But anyway, it's that idea that you can encapsulate something that in a movie, just a look between two characters tells you their relationship in half a second. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we have, as human beings, this amazing ability to make a whole out of the right parts. If we're given the right parts and they're arranged in the right way. Yeah? And even Aristotle writes about this 2,500 years ago. My Greek is very bad, but I think it's oike hedone, which is the proper pleasure, which comes when things are arranged properly. Yeah. And it's a question of which bits do we need to give the essential. Now, this relates to metrics, because one of the things that we discover in service design, we're doing it well, and one of the very early successes in this kind of stuff, we think about some of the large projects, people like Engine and LiveWork and so on in the early years of service design, was not doing the unessential. It was figuring out what is the minimum that we need and doing just that. And that actually can be not only more efficient and more cost effective in a very, very sort of banal sense, but it can actually make the experience more heightened and more valuable for people, because people are paying for experiences. We have so many points of data which show that. Transactions are also interesting, but when you want to get out of the price trap and get out of commoditization, you have to move into experience. This is Joe Pine 30 years ago and Gilmore. So I think metrics are interesting, because this brings us to a very, very fundamental distinction between two types of thinking, if you like, which is really central to why theatre show business is useful, because some things you can measure and some things you just can't.
Yeah.
You just can't measure them. You can measure their symptoms in some way. If someone loves a show, you could measure the amount of clapping, maybe. But we do know that the more they clap during the show, the less they will clap after the show, which is interesting. Yeah?
That is interesting.
Yes, isn't it? But every actor will tell you that. Or you could measure the number of social media posts about a thing, or the number of complaints that come in. There are always sort of secondary aspects that we can measure as metrics. Yeah. But we have to also accept that the actual thing itself may not be measurable. I had a wonderful boss many, many years ago, Mr. Tanaka, Japanese guy, when I worked at Honda, in the motorcycle division at Honda. And he was really big on the numbers. He was a sales guy. It was the numbers. And he used to say, Adam, son, if you can't measure it, it's not real. And at some point I kind of cracked and said, how much do you love your wife? Yeah. And he went, huh? And I said, don't give me a number. And he says, it's not a meaningful question. Then it's not real. you know, and we had a good relationship. He laughed about it. We had a good relationship. But I think this is very, very important. And I quite like it. I know Tom Peters is a bit of a populist and a polemist and so on. But Tom Peters often says, if it's rocking and rolling, you don't need to measure it. You know it's rocking and rolling. You know?
If it's working, it is working.
It's really obvious if it's really working.
But you need to, if it's rocking and rolling, you have to prove it to somebody that it's rocking and rolling. There's eventually the, I don't know.
This is the problem,
yeah. Or the CEO.
Yeah.
But that's why I guess I wanted to put my consultant hat and I go like, hey, like, how do I convince an executive to invest in this? Because say if you're just getting started and I want to use play and improvisation, how can I even make them understand that this is a serious tool that's going to give us so much insight? We already have this problem with service design. It's difficult to communicate to a lot of executives the way it works, because a lot of time the meaning of service design comes from the discovery that we go into. But what has that been like when, say, you've had the chance to pitch to Tanaka or other executives about your method?
As you mentioned, Mr. Tanaka, if he's out there listening, I miss you, old friend. But I think that there are two worlds in my, there are two wolves in my heart right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of them is, yes, absolutely, we have to speak the language of organizations. Yeah. Which is why I very rarely use the phrase service design at work. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a useful phrase. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's made of two words that people misunderstand. They don't know what service is, don't know what design is, but they think they understand both of them, which is the most dangerous thing in the world. So I use other terms like risk reduction.
Oh, I'm going to borrow that.
Yeah, and I don't say research, I say reality check. You know, and these are describing the same thing, but in a word which fits the organization. And the organization is risk oriented. It's measurable, targets oriented, and things like this. Yeah, I need that. That is what gives people the justification to do stuff, and it is not what convinces them. People, you say, why do they invest? People invest billions of dollars all the time in companies that are massively overvalued. There are no figures that show they should invest in them, but they believe in it.
Yeah.
And there's no evidence whatsoever that they should, but they do. So people who come and say we need a rational thing, I say, I don't think actually that the human economy is very rational. We make an emotional decision, and then we need, because we feel guilty about that, we need to have some kind of backup. So yes, we deliver the backup in the terms that the organization understands, in terms of, I don't know, the cost to the hotline to solve this problem right now, or the potential brand boost, or whatever it is that they're interested in, what's on their radar. But we still need to make an emotional appeal.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well said. Well, as for me, I would just walk into the executive's office. I'm thinking of that situation. Yeah. And how often it has been so that when you start to talk about whatever, whether you service design, risk management, whatever, then the topic changes, because all of a sudden in that moment you realize that the executive and the customer wants something else. The problem is something else. So you have to kind of twist your mind and be able to talk the language and offer what the customer wants, and from a different angle, in the way that they really adopt it. So this is what actually is what improvisation helps to get. You are not stuck in that your decision that you went to the room in to discuss with the executive. You get to change your mind, and all of a sudden we call it naivety in theater, where anything can happen and you can relate to that situation and come as a star out of it. So that's one thing. And then if I may go back to what Adam said about measuring, that it's difficult to measure something which you don't really feel. I slightly disagree with that you couldn't measure it, because in the long run, whether it's a social media post or the clapping of hands or whatever feedback, happy or not, you ask after the performance, eventually, if you have enough of data of that one, you can change those into numbers with which you can sort of convince the executives why this is worthy of studying. And I would say that theater gives some vague tools that I cannot at the very moment name, but it gives tools and thinking how to make that fuzzy thing more tangible and therefore more better explained.
Absolutely. And those are some really beautiful points, Maria and Adam. I really loved all the question around valuation. I didn't think we were going to go there. Like, hey, how do you value an idea? And then it is an emotional decision that we need like to build proof for over time. And that is so true. It's about what we experience, and then we find an issue and then create something to invoke an emotion. So yeah, that is beautiful. I'm going to bring in one of the trending topics now, which is about AI. And this is more to do with, yes, we have the business metrics, but as we go into this age of AI, and AI becomes better at generating all the, say, maps, the research synthesis, and all the possible scenarios, how valuable does some of this embodied human experience become? And how can we create that scenario stage where we can truly experience the entirety of or create a really great experience for the people we're working with?
Well, AI definitely lacks the empathy. It doesn't have consciousness. It's a great tool, and it's a very usable tool, but it completely lacks the empathy and the fuzzy thing that I mentioned earlier, which eventually creates the experience that people want to feel, and that's the end product. So I keep on saying, well, actually I have a colleague, and maybe this is from somebody else, but a fool with a tool is still a fool. So AI is still a tool. So we must know how to use it. And the tricky thing is with artificial intelligence, it's constantly modifying itself. We don't know how to handle it. There are so many tools, and they're like this today, and tomorrow they're different. So again, we have to adapt our own thinking and the use of it into our design.
Yeah.
So
thank you, Maria. That's very important. There's still a lot that it can't do. And it's very interesting to see what it will be able to do soon. I mean, already, for example, AR doctors are perceived by patients as being more empathic than human doctors are. But they're not really empathic, they're just saying the right things, So there's a question there about what is actually important, which is a huge question, of course. I'd like to recommend everyone looks into the work of my colleague Marcus Hormus on this one. If you go to teamingwith.ai, there's some really fascinating work happening there about the effects of using AI on teamwork, on how humans cope with it. But let's think about what we've really got here. I was, a few years ago, this is probably 5 years ago, maybe a bit more, maybe 8 years ago, I was standing in a huge conference center in the Netherlands, watching about 1,000 27-year-olds who work for one of the big 4 consultancies. And they just had their first major promotion. We're now going to be team leaders and stuff like that. So they were celebrating. They were from all over Europe and South Asia and places like this. It was awesome. Young people having a great time celebrating this thing. And I was standing beside a very senior partner from that organization who looked at them all and said, in 8 years, I've got no work for any of them.
Oh, wow.
Gosh.
And he had these groups of 1,000 coming in every few weeks. Yeah, huge company. Because yes, this tool is doing a lot of the things that we used to think were human work before. So in his word, that was around doing tax returns, doing legal checks, doing auditing, doing all the kind of stuff that the big 4 will do for you, the big, however many you want to count, will do for you. But what won't it do? What won't it do? And this is really, really interesting. I often ask people if we've done a task together. I use, because I come from theater, I often do stuff. Yeah. So in a group situation, I won't discuss something. I will do something first and we'll discuss what just happened. So I might have folks telling a story or something like that together, and then I'll ask them, Okay, let's imagine you'd had an AI here to help you with that. What would you want them to do? What are the tasks they would have been helpful for? You can imagine it's a perfect Android with infinite memory or whatever. So it can do all the good things. And they might say, well, maybe keep track of where we were and maybe check we weren't breaking the rules and stuff like this and so on. And then I say, what do you not want it to do? And it's really interesting what the answers are that come. This is a fantastic basis for discussion, because there is still stuff that we don't want the AIs to do. And this is very, very interesting, because we know, for example, that an AI will increase the average quality of an individual, but it will decrease the range, the diversity of a team's output. So a team of humans has, if they're using AI, it decreases the diversity of their output. Now, often the AI outputs are good enough, absolutely good enough. I mean, McDonald's makes a lot of money selling very bad hamburgers, but they're good enough for that purpose. But it's also not a Michelin star meal. There is space in the world for a McDonald's restaurant, and there's space in the world for a Michelin star meal. And I think what's happening is the border is changing. So as the average gets better, as the marketing department no longer needs the legal department, they can do their own legal assessment of something on their own AI, then boundaries start to blur, conflicts arise because of that, and we become smaller teams that are more powerful and perhaps more independent, but more in conflict with others. That's really, really interesting. But there will still be things where we say, okay, this still needs a human touch. It moves away from creation to curation. The AI produces a bunch of amazing ideas, and a human has to say, well, that one actually has something. I can't tell you why. But there is something here. And AI don't have that yet. And I'm not saying they never will.
I would like to go back to the 27-year-olds and thereabout and say that the person who said that they are not needed, I said, liar. They are needed. We people are needed, but maybe in a different role that we are now doing. So we designers, we have to modify our skill set and how and what we do. And that's due to AI, because it's coming whether you want it or not. It's here already somewhat. But I'm now intrigued. I would like to see a performance done by AI agents, like AI personas. Would I like to watch it? Would it be too perfect to watch? I leave this for the audience to decide.
There is. I mean, you can see AI movies now. I get them all the time on social media, and it's very much the uncanny valley stuff, On the other hand, some AI composed music is amazing now.
I was hoping for a live theater here.
I have some friends who've done improv using
Shakespeare.
Sorry?
Like AI agents doing Shakespeare.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. And I have some friends who do improv with AI. I have an AI improvisation partner. It's kind of meh at the moment.
What are you building? That is so cool. Tell us more.
They basically
does it have a name?
The simplest form is usually in typical like theater sport type improv that you might know from TV shows like Whose Line Is It Anyway. Then you get input from the audience, and they use the AI for that, which is it's about as good as an audience, okay? But they can ask you to say something more crazy, and it will adjust to what they say. They've tried putting it into scenes. There's often an interface problem with AIs, to be honest, which is really interesting theatrically as well, because, well, just think about a screen. How do 8 people use one screen? That's difficult. Or do they each have their own screen? Or do they use a voice interface, which seems to be a good thing to do? The problem is AIs, as Maria already pointed out, AIs don't think like human beings, but we think they do. We expect them to, because all our expectations for AI come from science fiction. It comes from Star Trek and 2001 and stuff like this. So we expect it to think like a human, just better, and it doesn't think at all like a human. And the more we anthropomorphize it, the more, for example, it gets a human voice, a realistic human voice, the more we believe it's human. So the more we fall into that error. So it's interesting how we use chat very, very dominantly with AI in most situations. But there are other interface forms, such as like adding in documents. Marcus often says, I want sliders. I want dials and sliders for my AI. So I remember it's a machine. I can actually tune it to to the type of responses that I want. It's super interesting. But I'd like to come back to one thing on this. That gap, that thing, those things that we say the AI can't help us with yet. Those human things, though, that intuition, the implicit, the reading between the lines, the sympathy, the empathy, the moment of mercy, all these kind of things. They are exactly the stuff of theater. And organizations are very, very scared of these things because they can't measure them, because they can't capture them. And in theater, we have a 3,500, 4,500 year old industry. And it's a big industry, by the way. I mean, show business in Germany comes between steel and chemicals in terms of a turnover. It's huge. We have an industry which is practiced and competent in handling emotion. And that is really, really interesting. And it's one that's very much ignored by most organizations. And it's precisely their problem. How do people feel about the stuff? Do they trust us? Do they not trust us? There's no trust meter. You can't measure that. You can measure the symptoms of trust, buying or not buying, but you can't measure the actual trust itself. So you're not getting a clean measurement. But we can still handle these things without measuring them if we use the right tools.
That is so beautifully crafted together. Thank you, Adam. And you're so right in saying that they are like, theater has studied these interactions for centuries, and it really has refined them over time. I'm just reminded of this one MIT professor who was giving a lecture at Autonomous Innovation Summit, and he talked about how AI is basically group cognition of every person that has existed and inputted their knowledge into the internet, right? So it's like a collective cognition of all these people, but it is very much text memory, or it is more database, as you say. It's not taking into account context, environment, smell, feeling, touch, like any of the haptic senses. If I had to describe it, it doesn't yet take those into account. So it's not expanded into, I guess, what the future could be. When humans think about it, it's more like cross-disciplinary. I had this experiences, and they think across those different areas, but AI remains in that particular lane. So there is that cross-disciplinary or beyond boundaries, as SDGC calls it, that is missing. And that's where, like, you could take a lot of these methods from theater and put it into a design and business practice. And similarly, we take business and then maybe have it in marketing. There is a lot of cross-disciplinary engagement that's going on. And that's another part where I feel like AI is still catching up to.
Yeah, it's very interesting generally. Sorry, Maria, you're speaking.
Yeah.
It's very interesting generally to think about the difference between the explicit and the implicit. I mean, I obsess on this one, so please forgive me if you heard it from me. But there are things that we can put into words, that we can write on a sticky note or put into a graph. They're explicit, they're super, super interesting. And there are things which are implicit that we can't. We can't put it on a sticky note. We can write a novel about it maybe, or a piece of music, and bring them across. But we have to put this information, and it's information, we have to put it into a container which can hold it. Like, I'm just down the road here from a couple of really great sport fashion companies, the two German ones. I just drove past their offices today, and they have to really deal with if a thing is cool or not. And you can't tell me why a thing is cool. And I've hung out with them, and they can't. It doesn't fit into words. What happens there is they have this amazing co-creative center where they can go and do stuff, which Marcus was involved in setting up again. And they go and they'll like pull out some cloth, and they go, it's kind of, but then and they'll show you like mood boards and stuff, and they'll say, this is cool. And you go, yeah, I understand now, but I can't still put it into words. The only way that I can pass that on is by showing somebody else the same mood board. So this is what prototypes do. Prototypes do contain some stuff which is explicit, like, I don't know, the dimensions or whatever, or the functions that are built into there. But they also contain a lot of implicit stuff. They contain things like how it feels to work with it, whether it's a conservative look, or if it's a cool look, or if it's a human look, or a playful, whatever. All those things are in there in a physical prototype. And we deal with interactions a lot. And the prototyping of interactions, I think, is best done by humans. It's done by a prototype interaction, which is called a scene. This is a fantastic way of carrying, it's the container for all that information which you can't write down. This is a challenge for the AIs again, because again, most of their input is text-based. So they can only handle what's been written down for them. They're getting much better at context. You have more and more context in the background. Context is way more important than prompting now, and you can get much, much better results from that. But they still can't tell the difference between yes and yes.
I love that. Yeah, that's true. But
they will.
AI,
not yet. Yeah.
Of course, and there are options, but it's so important, depending what you prompt there and whatever data the AI has. It's really dependent on that. And even if you would have all the data there, which is perfection, who wants perfection? Who wants to read a perfect story in a perfect book? It's boring. We want the cracks in the ocean. Those are interesting.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much, Maria. I know we can continue this conversation for the rest of the day, so I'm going to actually open up our Q&A to see if our audience has any inputs, questions for us. And as the audience is typing, I have some from Instagram that we've been discussing because of all the promo that we've been doing. So let me find out.
Do you want some waiting music from Show Business?
Oh, I love that.
I like to dance.
Okay, so this one, I really like this. Like, why can play sometimes allow people to confront serious things more honestly? It might be conflict, organizational transformation, or strategic design. Who wants to take that?
Well, I'd say that it's theater gives power for empathy. It's a lot of emotions that you go and you say yes, or yes, yes, or whatever. It's the tones that come in theater more, and it's easier because it's not, if you, for example, rehearse sort of a product or a service, and you put it in a form of a theater, it's not really real, and you can play there the way you want. And then you don't have to, it's like a trusted environment, and you have the psychological safety, which is so important today. And you can do it in theater and learn there the feelings and the empathy that you can then take to the actual product. I'm not sure if I answered any more the question. I kind of got lost in the track, but
no, I think you did, because the question was about play directly, and play is a really interesting word in theater, because what we do is we play theater. In English, it's called a play, but it's still an industry. It's still really hard work. It's tough business. It's dangerous and hard and sweaty, and the lights can kill you and all this kind of stuff, but it's still a play. Yeah. And that's interesting. And you said, the question was, how does play help us approach difficult things? And I think you captured it really well, Maria, because you said it is a safe space because the stakes are lowered. Yeah, the stakes come down, and that means that there's less risk, and that lets us be a little bit more experimental, a little bit more brave in what we do, because the risks have come down. This is one of the principles behind the Global Service Jam, which some of you might have heard of, which I co-initiated, was to give this space of low stake experimentation, because we know that almost all projects from the Jam are going to be binned at the end of it, and we know that the abstract themes that we use give people the chance to work on what they want to work on. So the stakes are low. They can avoid the big questions if they want to, or they can step into them, and that means it's okay to mess up. Yeah. And one of the things, my background is psychology many years ago. I'm actually a monkey psychologist, if you believe it.
Are you hiding that?
That's serious now.
But the function of play is really, really interesting psychologically and evolutionarily. And a lot of the function of play is learning, exactly as Maria just said. It's a space in which I learn. So when I'm in a playful mindset, it's an incredibly useful mindset. I have increased number of ideas, massively increased breadth of ideas. I'm less likely to hurt myself physically, less likely to hurt myself emotionally. I can say things I wouldn't say otherwise. It's a superpower. And it seems to be set up that way because that's how we learn.
True. In case the audience didn't get it, I take from Adam's whatever you said, it's like the playful mindset. Please use that one. You can take different roles even in and play your whatever design it is. But I would actually like to pose a question for the audience, asking that, have you used theater or any parts of theater or in its big picture in designing?
That would be very interesting to hear.
Yeah, that will definitely be interesting. I feel like you're going to continue this conversation of
I know actually a designer, a service designer who was asked to, they had this theatrical walkthrough in one of it was a physical product. And she had a background in acting, and she got so excited that she did it so multiple times that eventually the team was told her to slow down. Please don't do it. You don't have to do it in any prima donna role or different roles, but enough. So at least she used it, and it's a Finnish international corporation, which name I'm not mentioning here.
We teach this a lot. We have a great course called Theatrical Methods for Design and UX and CX, which I recommend to people. Bit of selling there. But I've had people who've told me of the stuff they've used after that. One of the very interesting techniques I use is around subtext. And subtext is it's the difference between yes and yes. One of them is I want to. One of them is I don't think I want to yet. Yeah, that's the different subtext. It's what you're thinking and not saying. And sometimes in theater we will bring subtext very, 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 very practically into a rehearsal by having, for example, one actor playing the role and the other actor playing their subtext and speaking what they think the character is saying right now. And I know that my friend Damien Kernahan used that. Was stuck on a problem with a client in Australia, and they used the subtext method of playing through an encounter and speaking the supposed, because we don't know for sure, but the supposed thoughts of the roles. They were able to suddenly just break a problem they've been working on for a long time, because you get down to the actual motivation rather than the behavior. And there's a big difference between motivation and behavior, and that's important for us to realize. Just an example.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Adam. And thank you, Maria. I see that we're pretty much at the end of the time, so we're nearing the end of the episode. And I would really love to continue this conversation, but as we said, this is a trailer, and we're going to continue this in SDGC. So that being said, you both have been part of SDGC for so long and also involved with the SDN organization. I'd love for you to share a little bit of your experience and maybe motivate some other amazing people to join us.
Mine's a very general thing. I mean, my first encounter with service design at all was at the Service Design Global Conference in Berlin, not the last one, but the one before that, which I think was 2010 or 11, I'm not sure, I think 2010. And what I've always loved about this is just the quality of conversations you get. Yes, of course, there are fantastic presentations. We can also watch them on video. Yeah. What I don't get on the video is I don't get the conversations in the hallway. I don't get the fact that the entire family comes together. This is the thing. There are several wonderful conferences out there, but this one is the big one. This is the big family meetup where the whole clan comes together, and just the coincidental encounters that you will have can often be life-changing. And they have been for me. I've made amazing friends. I've learned so much. And that's because the SDN manages to create this environment whereby people come and show up and share. And it's incredible. It's the generosity of sharing is amazing.
Yeah. Well,
thank you.
Coming back maybe from like cross disciplines, which I totally enjoy. So thank you for inviting me here again, like putting theater and service design together. So, and for me, it's like service design is no longer service design only. It's so much more, and that's what I like, that meeting different service designers within the network, you get to hear so many different perspectives, and the family and the atmosphere of service design has become so big and from different angles that I love the cross disciplines coming together and the creativity that is born out of that one. So that's exciting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Maria and Adam, for sharing about your SDGC experience. I see a couple of questions actually come through, so we're going to take a few seconds to answer that. I guess typing takes a bit of time. So here, let's start with this one. Prem says, interesting conversation. Thank you. Are we getting distance from human values, or are the human of value becoming more valuable? Very meta. I love it.
I love it. I think, yes, we are. I think AI is part of this. I think a very transactional mindset around the world right now that we might see politically and things like this about what's valuable and what isn't is very strong, and I think very distressing. And I think that it's a shame, because not only in terms of what's right and what's wrong, but also in terms of what's successful. We know that if you get the human factors right, you're going to be more successful. They are hard. I mentioned Tom Peters before today. Tom Peters said the soft factors are the hard stuff. Yeah, I'm paraphrasing, but this stuff is really, really crucial, and we need to look at more tools that can handle this. And it is things like psychology and psychiatry and ethnography and so on, which are good at handling the human side. And there are all kinds of people with great skills in that, from nurses to teachers to salespeople who've got amazing human recognition and noticing skills, which are fantastic. And I think that theatre is a great one of those. One thing I love about theatre, and I'm very lucky to work with very, very wide range of people, from very senior to very, very junior staff. I really enjoy working with frontline staff. I'm very privileged to get to work with some indigenous startup groups and stuff like this. People have a very different world picture than I do. Brilliant people. And what I love about that is that you realize that a lot of the things that we take for granted, we said at the very beginning of this hour that designers are good at visualization. Well, that's a skill, and even reading that is a skill. Literacy is a skill not everybody has. Being able to stand in front of a room and talk is not a skill everybody has. Abstraction is not a skill everybody has, because they have other skills. And I think it's very, very important that we have things like theatre and building and play and so on, which enable us to share the amazing wisdom out there, which don't rely on the typical business skills that we always take for granted, and we shouldn't.
I'm slightly more positive, maybe, because I think that's the scary part, that we are distancing from the human value because we're scared of it. But I would like to think that if we're just willing to go with the flow, don't go against where the stream is going, but go with the stream and modify yourself, then then we come as a nation with humanity. We realize the basics eventually. And then human values are important, exactly those that Adam earlier listed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maria.
We still live for humans. I mean...
Yeah, that is true. Amazing. We're going to take 5-10 minutes more, because I see a couple of questions coming in. I just want to take a few because these are really rich conversation. So let's see. Looks like Martin answered your question that you posed to the audience. I use theatre analogy all the time to explain what design brings and how it operates. The best method I've seen is to translate how we work to people from non-design backgrounds.
Martin, I will be calling you for good tips. I think you have them.
You should. Martin is in Northern Ireland, working with the Northern Ireland Public Service and doing absolutely fantastic work. Just really, really awesome. And the whole vibe from his team is one of the most positive ones that I've met. I know they have really tough problems that they're facing, like anyone in public service, real life or death issues sometimes, but they do an amazing job, and they're so open and so curious. I love it.
Amazing. Martin says amazing, great insights, and thank you for the great takeaways. And one final comment by Rohit. He says role play walkthroughs work really well for them. So yes, that was something that we were highlighting. All right.
Very quick tip there. Try and avoid the word role play. People are very put off by it. I even know folks who have in there.
Reality check.
Walkthrough. Walkthrough is great.
Okay.
Yeah, simulation, things like this. People don't like the word role play. They've often been exposed to bad role play experiences in training and so on. I know more than one person who has written in their work contract they will not be required to do role play.
Got it. Interesting. Thank you for the pointer. Written. All right, perfect. With that, we will head to a closing question for today. And we have, to wrap this all up, if service design was a playbill, and if you could rewrite service design playbill, what would you cut? What would you improvise? And what would you encore?
Please, Adam, go first.
Well, I think we've talked a lot about the encores today. I think both Maria and I really enjoy and value the human side and the human skills of our profession. The fact that it takes people's lived experiences and people's internal lives seriously, because we know that they're important and they lead to success as well for the organizations who are trying to help people. So that's great. I want to cut the use of the singular. I want to cut phrases like the journey and the experience and the blueprint, because we need there are multiple experiences out there, which mean that we need multiple journey maps, multiple experiences. We need a library of complexity that we navigate our ways through, rather than forcing things down to be one standard.
Absolutely. Love that, because I do think we have multiple journey, because I think Maria was talking about systems thinking and how it's not just one journey. You probably are dealing with a system of journeys, and it's so important to understand that you need to zoom out to look at that holistic picture. And then of course you focus in and work on one specific element, but there exists that big picture. Maria?
All right. Good thing that in Finnish language there is no the. We don't have articles.
So you don't have the word.
You don't have to cut that one. But if I would have to cut something from service design, I would. Don't stick to the canvas that you have. The canvas is a living document, and that brings me to improvise. Be ready to improvise and rehearse it. And then that's also the encore. Encore is when you have the experience of the product or service already, when you have had the performances or whatever, then you start learning, because it's again and again and again. So it becomes more like professional actors. They may be scared in the beginning, but it's the role, sorry for using for that word, but the role for the actor becomes so real for them that eventually it just a job to do for them eventually. So
yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Maria. With that, we come to the end of our session today. Do you have any final words for our audience as we close?
Thanks for watching. You're the audience. You made it happen.
Yes.
So,
I hope you had a great reception of this one, and I hope we were able to co-create a great show.
and the speaker experience from the SDN team has been amazing. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Maria, for joining us today. And thank your amazing audience for making it such a lively show where you kept interacting with us. And see you later on the SDGC stage. All right. Bye.
Thank you very much. Give you some sign language applause.
Oh, with that said, I have a couple of announcements for you. SDGC has limited tickets for public sector professionals, so please get your ticket if you haven't already. These are incredible, great experiences, and we have a lot of public sector discussions coming up, so stay tuned for that. And then we have SDGC promo events, virtual, which are coming up soon. One of them is the SDGC Sandbox. We talked about the areas for play and how we can create safe space for engagement. So this is an incredible space for that, where we have an entire week of co-creating together, collaborating on what does the society of the future looks like, and the social operating system of governance models. So definitely scan that, sign up, and then join us. This is a free event, so we're looking forward to hosting all of you. And finally, today is the last day for the submission of SDN awards. In case you haven't already, pick up the spade and submit it today so that you can get your incredible service design project on the map and bring it to the SDGC stage. All right, thank you so much, everyone. With that, I will see you next week. Bye.